Hey, this is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, Savage Reads. I have a bit of a different video today. I went on a trip to Edinburgh last week, and so I thought I would maybe share a little bit about that, and then I do have a few books that I want to discuss. And so I'm excited to do that. I have some other videos that I really want to film in the next couple months. I have a couple tags that I want to do. I have a video that I want to make of some of my favorite authors. I also want to do an in-depth nonfiction book recommendation video. So I'm excited. Summer, hopefully I'll have a little more time to make some different videos aside from my normal book wrap-ups. But let's jump into a little bit about what I did this last week. So last week, I went out to Edinburgh for just a few days and we brought the family and it was so fun. I got to see my sister-in-law and her husband and their little kid, and we got to do a little bit of touring around. And so while we toured around, we saw some really beautiful little bookshops and they were gorgeous. I had such a fun time looking at some of the books and some of the fun kind of touristy stores. It was a great time to just kind of wander. We also made sure to stop in Central Library, in the children's library, and it was such a cute little library and the kids had so much fun. My daughters were so excited to find books in English, so I was taking pictures of books that they're interested in that I'll try to find later for them. At Central Library, I saw this sign for Knit and Natter. Isn't that the cutest thing? I wish I lived there because that sounds like the perfect group for me to join. I would love to talk about books while knitting. That sounds like the ideal. And then when I go to different museums, one of my favorite things to do is find museums that have collections of old dolls. And my favorite thing is to find the creepiest dolls and try to get a picture of them. These two dolls definitely won the creepiest in the Toy Museum at Edinburgh. I enjoyed that immensely. And there is also this bonus doll that I am going with Toddler Pooping Face as the name of this one. It was great to be there, but freezing cold. I was in so many jackets the whole time and I'm not used to that. Catalonia right now is beautiful and warm. Today it's pouring rain, but it's still warm, and so I was not prepared for just how cold summer in Scotland can be. I've been to Scotland one other time, but it's been maybe 10 years, and I remember then that nothing felt colder than summer in Scotland. And so I wasn't quite prepared, but if you can guess, we went to see the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. So my husband is a big fan and it was so fun to see him and his sister get to enjoy the concert together, and I had a good time too. It was quite the show, very fun. The whole city of Edinburgh really went Taylor Swift themed. Every store, every restaurant we went into was only playing Taylor Swift. All of the bagpipes were only playing Taylor Swift out on the streets. It was definitely the weekend for Swifties to be in Edinburgh, but it was a great time. So I'm glad that I got to go just a couple days, but it was great to see some family and see a few things. So that's my little life update, what I did last week. Did do a few bookish things, but did not read quite as much because I don't like to read when I'm on vacation, but I still managed to finish 3 books. So I'm really excited to talk about those. Let's jump into that. The first book that I want to talk about is The River We Remember by William Kent Kruger. And this is a recommendation from Melinda at A Web of Stories, and I have heard her talk about this book quite a bit. I know it is one of her favorites. This is taking place in the 1950s in a small town in Minnesota when a murder occurs. So we get a few different perspectives in this book. We get the people who are trying to solve the case. We have a woman with her adolescent son who works at a restaurant. We also have the lawyer who is working on the case. And we get all these different perspectives that are coming together not only to solve the case, but really give a portrait of this small town. And I thought that it was really well done. It kind of had a To Kill a Mockingbird kind of feel. You have this small town who is rocked by things that are happening, and things are never going to be the same again, and the town is going to have to confront the prejudices and the secrets that they've been keeping. I did enjoy it. I was hooked. My only thing is there were just a few things character-wise that bothered me, that I wish that they would have been more addressed instead of skated past. But I don't want to spoil it because I think this was a good book and I think people should read it. So I don't really want to spoil any of the things that happen later on in the book, but there just were things that didn't quite work for me. I also felt like we had these perspectives from these different people, and the perspective that I was really missing was from Bluestone or his wife. While not getting their perspectives, I almost felt like something might have been missing from the book, that we were really focusing on the white characters and their perspectives, even though it was trying to be inclusive and showing all the different characters. But other than that, I really did think it was well done. It just was that small town being shaken up and having to address the real root causes of a lot of the problems that they have. And so I think that if you like that kind of book, this was really, really well done. So this next book was a recommendation from Becca at Read Becca, and I will make sure to link her channel down below. And I picked up Paradise Falls, The True Story of an Environmental Catastrophe by Keith O'Brien. This is following the true story of a town that is by Niagara Falls who had been poisoned by a company disposing of their chemical waste improperly in the town. And these kids were all getting sick. There's a child that dies. They are all getting sick and they cannot get the government to take it seriously and get the resources they need. And it's about that fight to get these problems recognized, to get compensation, to get help. And I thought that it was really interesting. We have these mothers who are struggling, who need answers and are not going to give up. And their stories are powerful and also sometimes like, that really happened? Oh my goodness, like kind of crazy at points. And hearing about what these companies did and how they tried to cover it up and how little people knew of the effects of some of these chemicals in the groundwater and what it could do to people and children. It was fascinating. Highly recommend this book. I thought it was super interesting. I really want my dad to read this book because he is a chemist and I feel like I would like some more background and understanding of what these chemicals are and what they can do. And I think that it would be a really interesting discussion if I can get my dad to pick this one up, because for me, I have to take things a bit at face value. So if the author says this chemical was found in the ground, it is horribly deadly, I'm like, wow, a horribly deadly chemical in the ground. And I would love to have a little more background about how deadly these chemicals are, how much has to be in your water or in your home for it to be dangerous. I would love to know a little bit more information in depth about the chemical aspect of it. So Dad, please read this book. But overall, I really thought it was an interesting book and kept me hooked, because nothing like children being poisoned and the government looking the other way to make me need to know the end. And so highly recommend. It was a really good read and just so interesting to think about, because these kinds of things aren't exclusive to this area at this time period. This is an ongoing problem of how do we dispose of chemical waste? How do we make sure that companies aren't polluting the environment and making our lives dangerous and less healthy just to make a buck? I thought that not only was it very interesting, it feels very relevant to today. So highly recommend. Great book. Now, this last book was a recommendation from Sue Jackson, so I will make sure to link her channel down below. And I picked up The Story of Beautiful Girl by Rachel Simon. So this book is following our three main characters. We have Martha, who is a retired school teacher, and one night a couple show up on her doorstep, and the girl has just given birth. And Linny is a woman with some developmental disabilities, and she is with a black man named Homan, who is deaf. And they have this young baby, but soon the authorities show up, Homan escapes, and Linny is taken back to an institution, and Martha is left with this baby that she is going to try to raise. So we have Martha and her storyline, we have Linny in the institution and what happens with that, and we have Homan and his journey to finding meaning in his life and trying to get back to Linny. So there are elements of historical fiction, romance in this book. It is really interesting talking about these institutions and what happened in them. The author did a lot of research to try to make Linny and Homan's voices authentic and to understand what their experiences might have been like and to be able to share that. So I appreciated that. So I fell in love with these characters. I thought the characters were really sweet and really authentic feeling, and I thought that it had some important topics, but was it almost sickly sweet at points? Yes. Did it favor Hallmark happiness over realistic results? Yes. And so it kind of was sappy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing always. I had a good time. I enjoyed reading it. And I think that it dealt with some good things and I loved the characters. But did it feel real all the time? Not really. There were quite a few things that just felt contrived. And so I liked this book. I had a nice time reading it. Do I think it was a great book? Not really. But is it still worth picking up? Sure, if you are willing to get into a book where you root for the characters and things might be contrived and you can enjoy that and just suspend your disbelief. If you are looking for a super accurate historical fiction on how things would actually have gone for these characters at this time and place, I just don't know if it's very likely. And so, I'm a little mixed on this one because did I like the characters? Yes. Did I have a good time? Yes. Was it great? Probably not. But it was still interesting and still worth thinking about because the history of these institutions is super interesting and important to how we treat people with mental health struggles, with disabilities, how they get support, how they are able to advocate for themselves, and those discussions are super important. So, this kind of ends up being a 3-star book for me because on one hand, it was super contrived, but on the other hand, I liked it. I don't know. And that is what I have read the past week or so. If you have any thoughts on these books, or if you have ideas on what extra videos I should make in the next few months, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you all very soon on the next one.